Good evening, citizens of Portsmouth and my colleagues on council, city staff, and all of our guests here tonight. I want to welcome you. I would now ask if everyone would please stand for a moment of silence. And while we're standing, I would ask that you take a moment to remember a public servant that we lost this week, Mr. Bob Triplett. He was affectionately called the Peanut Man. He was downtown selling peanuts, raising money for scholarships for our youth in the city of Portsmouth. And we will miss Bob, and we're going to keep him in our thoughts and prayers. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would ask that my colleagues note your presence electronically.
7 members of City Council are present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have the minutes of a called meeting on September 26, 2023, and a regular meeting on September 26, 2023. Do we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes?
Move adoption.
Second.
I would ask my colleagues to vote electronically.
The minutes are adopted 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk, would you please read the speaker rules?
Ladies and gentlemen, City Council rules require limit of up to 5 minutes to speak. As you approach the speaker's podium, you will notice a timer. At the beginning of your 5 minutes, you will see a green light. 4 minutes into your remarks, you will notice a yellow light. At the end of 5 minutes, you will see a red light, hear a beep, and we ask that you conclude your comments at that time. While speakers have an opportunity to address council on matters of public concern, all comments should be made in a manner that respects the seriousness of the forum and should not be made in a belligerent, sarcastic, or demeaning fashion. All remarks shall be directed to the City Council as a body rather than any particular member of City Council, staff, or the audience, and should be limited to matters that only the Portsmouth City Council can influence. A speaker who fails to observe this basic rule of decorum will be deemed out of order and not allowed to conclude his or her comments.
Thank you, ma'am. We've now come to the item on our agenda for public hearings, item 23-318 UP-23-10, item A. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the resolution for this public hearing?
Yes, sir. Downtown, excuse me. Resolution granting the request of Dr. Angela D. Riddicks for a use permit to operate an event space, banquet hall, and entertainment establishment on the approximately 0.26 acre parcel located at 340 High Street in downtown D1 T5 zoning subdistrict and the downtown design district overlay. The future land use map of the Bill 1 Portsmouth Comprehensive Plan designates this property for mixed-use downtown-type land uses. The property is owned by OMD Entertainment, LLC. Planning Commission recommends approval with conditions, and the actual resolution reads, a resolution granting a use permit, UP 2310, to OMD Enterprise, LLC, to operate an event space, banquet hall, and entertainment establishment at 340 High Street.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is the applicant present?
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, if you all would come forward and state your name and address. The applicant, ma'am, you can come as well. State your name and address, and you will have 10 minutes. You know you don't have to take the whole 10, but you have 10 minutes.
My name is Robert Barclay, and my business address is 200 High Street, Suite 500, Portsmouth, Virginia. And I'm the attorney for the applicant. I'm here with Dr. Riddicks tonight, and she is the founder of a healthcare and technology company called ARDX, which is focused on a number of initiatives, and one of her most significant initiatives is empowering women entrepreneurs. That vision led her and her husband to purchase the former Tidewater Community College Art School building, which is on the corner of High and Court Street. And she hopes to promote workspaces that would help new entrepreneurs, and especially women entrepreneurs, get their businesses going and thrive. There's a picture of the building. One aspect of the uses that she intends to include in the building, besides office workspaces, is to use the third floor for an event space that would host corporate retreats, corporate training, weddings, and other sorts of events. There's a picture of the floor plan on the screen. And for that use, a use permit is required for an entertainment establishment or an event space and banquet hall. We have reviewed the staff report in detail and reviewed the conditions, and Dr. Reddix is in agreement with all of the conditions in the use permit. We met with the Old Town Civic League on August the 17th, and we met with the Old Town Business Association on September the 12th. In both those meetings, we received positive feedback. One of the issues that seemed to be of the greatest concern was parking, and so Dr. Reddix has put quite a bit of work into addressing that concern. In addition to purchasing the building itself, she also purchased the parking lot that is at the corner of Queen and Court Streets that was also owned by the college. And there are between 40 and 55 spaces available in that lot. And she would use exclusively valet parking for all guests. Valet parking would be available on the Court Street side of the building, and that would be at no additional cost. If there was an event going on, you know, if there was charges, it would all have been included previously, so people would not be charged for the valet parking when they check in. And if there is any overflow, if that lot fills up, she, as part of the conditions, she has to prepare a parking plan and run that through the zoning administrator. And as part of that, she's reached out, or will reach out, to the parking authority to make sure the space is available in the parking garage on London Street. And she's also reached out to other parking lot owners, private owners such as churches in the area, and is making arrangements with them for additional overflow parking. So I think the parking issue should be more than adequately addressed. The Planning Commission, as you heard, recommended approval unanimously. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Reddix to give you a little bit of insight into her vision for the property. And then after that, we're available for questions.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Dr. Reddix.
Good evening. Thank you all for your time. Our vision is to be...
Ma'am, could you help me out? Could you do me one favor? Could you please state your address, because we like to have that for the record?
Okay.
Okay?
And the business address?
That's fine.
Okay. 1525 North Military Highway.
Thank you.
So our vision is to be a beacon of life for Portsmouth, for hope for women. We have done this in 48 states across the United States in our program called Envision Lead Grow, where we have transformed communities of poverty into communities of prosperity through the promise of middle school girls. Since 2016, we have created over 2,400 thousandaires out of middle school girls. That has allowed us to move now into working with women with that same program that was based on my dissertation, my study. And now we are coming back home to the Hampton Roads area. We've purchased the building in Ghent, where we are now headquarters for health equity through Ardix. And so with this building in Portsmouth, we are focusing on one aspect of social determinants of health, which is economic stability. by focusing on women. So the first 2 floors, we have tenants who are all thriving entrepreneurs that will provide not only training, not only capital, but now a home where they can be mentored and supported to scale their businesses. On the 3rd floor is where we look to have an upscale wedding venue that we will have preferred vendors that we vet through an RFP process. This will be owner occupied, so my husband and I will be on site. We are ensuring that there's security, that we maintain a presence because we have an obligation to the women as well as those who will rent the space on the 3rd floor. Any questions?
Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
Yes, Dr. Reddix, I commend you and your husband for your vision and your work. My question is for staff. The parking requirement that's being placed, is that something that's consistent throughout the district? And is it the particular reason why it's so much a requirement in her application that she have that much parking fulfilled?
She was being proactive in purchasing that lot and understanding there are other businesses in the area. So since she did purchase a lot and she's going to do valet parking, the code does require her to submit a parking plan to the zoning administrator. But in general, in the downtown area, there's no real requirement for parking in that general area.
Right. Right. So it's one thing for Dr. Reddix to want to do that. It's another thing to put it in the requirement. And that's why I was questioning, why does it have to be in the requirement? Because she's doing that out of her own goodwill, in essence. Not if I understand you correct, it's not a zoning requirement.
Since she's doing valet parking, at that point, it becomes, she has to submit a parking plan to show how she's going to do valet parking. Since she's doing, the zoning ordinance does require that for valet parking.
But not the number of spaces.
No.
Okay. So she wouldn't be, if she didn't have a certain number of spaces, that wouldn't be in contradiction or anything to her application?
No, sir, that would be a problem.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Any other? Vice Mayor Lucas Burke. Ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Attorney Barclay and Dr. Reddix for the presentation. Your reputation precedes you, so we know the good work that you have done in this community, and you know I'm always in favor of things that provide an opportunity to empower women and girls, and I think that this fits right in the model of what we need here in Portsmouth. We thank you for choosing Portsmouth and this location. I think that this is a great opportunity, you and your husband. I know it's not a small task to put your energy, your time, and your spare energy into doing something like this. So I'm in favor of it, and I hope my colleagues would also be.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Councilman Hugel, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Dr. Reddix, Attorney Barkley, thanks for presenting tonight. Dr. Reddix, appreciate the work that you're doing for our young women and extending that opportunity here in downtown Portsmouth. And knowing that the Planning Commission's already voted unanimously to approve, and you've taken all the proactive steps that I think any of us would look to set this thing in motion. So I appreciate that you're out in front already of engaging with the community and addressing their concerns. So I certainly plan on supporting you and appreciate you bringing this opportunity to Portsmouth.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Attorney Barclay and Dr. Reddix, thank you both so much. We appreciate you coming forward.
All right. Thank you.
This is a public hearing, and we do have a speaker, and our speaker for this item is Ms. Joanne Clark. Ms. Clark, if you would come forward, state your name and address. Ma'am, you will have 5 minutes.
Good evening. Joanne Clark, I live in Churchland. Good evening, members of council and staff. We have 3 items similar to this in identification: entertainment establishments. Some are with this understanding that this is an event space with a banquet hall and entertainment. Others are different, but they still have the word entertainment in it. I didn't catch how many hours, how late this facility would be open, and I think that should be a consideration. I don't remember in watching the Planning Commission if they stated that, or I may have forgotten. The city charter, as well as the state's charter, says that elected officials are here to promote the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens. Some of these entertainment, so-called restaurants and other establishments that you have already approved in the city have caused some concern with the residents that are nearby, and mostly since the 2019 setback zoning ordinance has been eliminated. I know that there are some residents that are somewhat near to this facility. I don't know how much noise they will create, or if parking will be an issue for fact, depending upon their facility. It certainly sounds like a welcome establishment, certainly benign in nature, but I do have some concern that maybe we should redefine these establishments in a certain way in the zoning recognition, so they would be more specific to their use and their location. Once again, there are 2 more items similar to this on the agenda, and I will address the other ones when they come up. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Hugel, sir, you have a question?
No question, just a comment back to Mrs. Clark. The Dr. Reddick's proposal is to operate from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Thank you, sir. Once again, this is a public hearing. You are not required to have signed up to come and speak on this public hearing item. If you do come forward, you will be asked to state your name and address, and you will have 5 minutes. Is there anyone who wishes to come and speak on this public hearing item?
Mr. Mayor.
Hold on, sir. Seeing none, then this public hearing is closed? Okay, well, you would have to. Ma'am? I don't think he wants to speak. Okay. This public hearing is closed. Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have the floor.
That's okay. We good.
We need a motion and a second.
Move for approval.
Second.
Is there any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, would you please vote electronically?
This item is adopted 7-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item B, under the same public hearing, is UP-23-16. Item B, Kearney Farm. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the resolution we're considering for this item?
Yes, sir. Resolution granting the request for Cellco Partnership on behalf of Verizon Wireless for a use permit to construct and operate a 125-foot monopole telecommunications tower with a 4-foot lightning rod together with related communications equipment on an 800-square-foot fenced portion of 6.5-acre parcel at 4710 High Street West in the General Residential Zoning District. The future land use map of the Bill 1 Portsmouth Comprehensive Plan designates this property for industrial public use. The property is owned by Richard Burbaker, trustees. Planning Commission recommends approval with conditions, and the actual resolution reads, a resolution granting a use permit, UP 2316, to Verizon Wireless to construct and operate a 125-foot monopole telecommunications tower with a 4-foot lightning rod together with related communications equipment on an 800-square-foot fenced portion of 4710 High Street West.
Thank you, ma'am. Is the applicant present? If you would please come forward, ma'am, state your name and address. You will have 10 minutes.
Great, thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council, and staff. For the record, my name is Lisa Murphy. I'm a local zoning attorney with an office at 440 Monticello Avenue in the city of Norfolk. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant, Cellco Partnership, which does business as Verizon Wireless. As the clerk mentioned, Verizon Wireless is seeking a use permit to construct and operate a 125-foot monopole wireless communications facility with a 4-foot lightning rod on the property owned by the DC Church, located at 4710 High Street West. As many citizens during the Planning Commission process and otherwise have expressed, and as many of you are aware, wireless services in the portion of Churchland surrounding the subject property are far less robust than they are elsewhere in the city. You may not realize why. In December of 2007, only 16% of Americans were wireless only at home. All of us still had a landline, and a wireless phone was a phone that you used for business. It was a nice to have, but not a necessity. Well, fast forward that to June of last year, just under 71% of Americans were wireless only at home. That number is 82% for homes with children in them. And the number is over 87% for millennials, many of whom have never had a landline phone. In addition, today's wireless devices are no longer just phones. As we all know, they now serve as smart devices. They're a combination of phone, video camera, calculator, mini computer. They allow us to surf the internet, pay our bills online, order goods and services, connect virtually with doctors, customers, clients, friends, and most importantly, loved ones. So in order to keep up with the demand for wireless services, more and more antenna sites are needed, and they need to be closer and closer to the neighborhoods and the residents that they serve. We're here tonight because Verizon Wireless has a need for an antenna site in the area to provide more robust wireless services. And this is specifically the Churchland area, including the Sterling Point and Green Acres neighborhoods and the surrounding neighborhoods. The proposed tower is going to connect with antennas located to the north, approximately 1.5 miles away. Antennas on another tower, also 1.5 miles away to the northeast near the Western Freeway, and antennas on a tower off of Tire Neck Road, which is also 1.5 miles away. Like the network of all other wireless carriers, Verizon Wireless looks first for existing structures on which to locate its antennas when it needs an antenna site. Why do they do that? Well, it's cheaper and it's faster. They don't need to go through a public hearing process, submit an application. Typically, it's an administrative review. When there aren't any existing antenna sites or existing tall structures or buildings that they can install antennas on, they tend to look for larger properties. Now, as you can imagine, in heavily residential areas, those properties are harder and harder to find. They tend to be things like churches, libraries, schools often. So the particular site that you have before you, this shows you the location of the wireless structure is in the northeast corner of the property. The applicant will use the existing curb cut into the parking lot of the DC Church, and they'll follow the existing paved areas to access the tower site. So they won't have to install a new access road or a new curb cut on High Street. They'll be able to use the existing structure. This particular site is ideal because it is a large parcel, 6.5 acres, and in the rear of the property, the undeveloped portion of the property has very large trees and mature vegetation. And for that reason, it was determined that would be an appropriate location. As I mentioned, the site itself is 6.5 acres. The compound will be enclosed with a 7-foot-high black vinyl-coated fence and landscaping. The tower will be a galvanized steel monopole, and as you can see from the tower profile, it'll be constructed for Verizon Wireless and at least 2 additional carriers. So 2 other carriers that might have coverage issues in the area would also be able to use this tower. The facility will be unmanned and it will be visited very infrequently. It won't generate any type of noise or glare or smoke. It's not going to generate any traffic. It's really a very passive use. We were able to hold a community meeting with the Churchland Civic League and we invited all of the adjacent and surrounding property owners. That was August the 14th, and there were about 20 people that came to that meeting. Generally speaking, they were in support because they have all experienced the coverage issues in the area. As the staff report indicates, the application complies with the zoning ordinance and the city's policies of promoting public health, safety, and welfare by providing needed service to the public in a manner that has really a minimal impact on adjacent properties. The property itself is designated for institutional and public use in the comprehensive plan, as the city clerk mentioned, and this needed wireless infrastructure will provide a use that benefits public safety and welfare. As some of the folks who wrote into the Planning Commission indicated, this is really a public safety issue for a lot of them, having good wireless coverage and wireless access. The Planning Commission recommended approval by a vote of 6-0, and staff has also recommended approval. We respectfully request that you approve UP 23-16. We've reviewed all the conditions with staff, and they're all acceptable. I'm happy to stand by for questions.
Councilman Hugel, sir, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Attorney Murphy, for making the presentation tonight. As you pointed out, the Planning Commission was unanimous in their support. I've had phone calls and emails from Churchland residents, and they have also been unanimous in their support. So I appreciate that you're interested in investing in that part of Portsmouth to help our folks with a gap in wireless coverage.
Thank you, Attorney Murphy. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. You are not required to have signed up to come speak on this public hearing item. If you do come forward, please state your name and address, and you will have 5 minutes. Seeing none, this public hearing is closed. We are in need of a motion and a second.
Second.
Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, please vote electronically.
This item is adopted 7-0.
Item C, UP-23-17. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the resolution we are considering in this public hearing item?
Yes, sir. Resolution granted the request of Miguel Roldan for a use permit to operate an entertainment establishment as part of a restaurant on a portion of 2884 Airline Boulevard, parcel designated as 2860 Airline Boulevard. The parcel is located in the general mixed-use zoning district. The future land use map of the Bill 1 Portsmouth Comprehensive Plan designates this property for mixed-use corridor. The property is owned by Michael Zarpis. Planning Commission recommends approval with conditions. The actual resolution reads, a resolution granting a use permit, UP 2317, to Miguel Roldan to operate an entertainment establishment at 2884 Airline Boulevard.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is the applicant present? Sir, if you would come forward, state your name and address, you will have 10 minutes.
Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, the council, and staff. I'm Michael Zarpis. I'm the property owner. This is Miguel Roldan, who's the tenant proposed for the building at 2860 Airline Boulevard that formerly housed Check into Cash. I bought the property nearly 20 years ago with the thoughts of redevelopment of an ailing shopping center with a closed Zayres, Ames, whatever you want to call it. We've been left for dead for quite some time. It's taken me nearly 20 years to reel in a restaurant that's full service that could provide something the community's desperately lacking out there. And Miguel's that person to bring, home style cooking Mexican to Portsmouth on Airline Boulevard. And I'm hoping that you'll see to approve his conditional use permit to operate an entertainment facility there, to do, small things as he had outlined to staff at planning that was approved earlier. But got a very large property there, and we plan to make significant improvements to this building. Thank you for your consideration. Miguel, is there anything else you'd like to say, sir?
My name is Miguel Roldan. I'm a resident of Virginia Beach, 957 South Clubhouse Road, Virginia Beach. I met with Mr. Sarpis about 5 months ago, and we spoke about the property. At first, I wasn't interested in coming to Portsmouth. I wanted to stay in Virginia Beach. But after he talked to me about the building, I looked into the building, and my wife and I looked at the building, and we saw the potential in the building, where has lots of like for using the drive-through, and that's a plus for us, having a drive-through and having the patio side, using the use of patio side. My wife, she's Colombian. I'm full blood Mexican, so we both we love our culture, and we probably have a little mix of Colombian and Mexican food in there. And we look into this building several times, and then finally, now we're happy to be in Portsmouth, and hopefully we'll get approval from you guys so we can open this business.
Thank you, sirs. Are there any questions from my colleagues on council? Councilman Hugel, sir, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Roldan, Mr. Zarpis, thanks for bringing a family restaurant to Portsmouth. I hear a lot from my neighbors about we don't have enough family restaurants in town. And so while I appreciate that you're in Virginia Beach and maybe didn't want to come here, I appreciate that you've worked together to figure out how to do that. Planning Commission was unanimous in supporting, and I intend to support as well. Again, thanks for bringing your restaurant to Portsmouth.
Thank you so much for
you.
the vote of confidence.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other questions from my colleagues on council? Thank you, sirs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have a speaker, registered speaker for this item, Ms. Joanne Clark. Ma'am, if you would come forward, state your name and address. You will have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Joanne Clark, Churchland. Once again, we have another restaurant. This one, I think, is also offering outdoor seating. I also noticed that on the previous slide, it shows Mohican Drive and a bunch of residences. I'm not sure, again, exactly about the hours that this establishment will operate. I really don't know. Do they have an ABC license? My concern is the hours that might be late and any disturbances to the neighborhood and the community, and possibly any other attractions that may not be happy ones. It's nice to have a family restaurant. I hope that's exactly what it is and how it stays. My concern is about the elimination of the setbacks in the zoning ordinance, because otherwise, if we went back to the old zoning ordinance in 2019, which is when this body eliminated them during COVID, this wouldn't be allowed as a application to go forward. And I'll be speaking on another one too. My concern is from history. You approved 3 of these already. 2 of them have had needed police attention that were not necessary. Our police don't need to be babysitting for late hours of people utilizing alcohol and beverage and entertainment
Mr. Mayor,
together.
point of order. Can we speak, can she speak to the application and not all of this speculative issues? There's nothing that she knows about this applicant as far as noise and alcohol. I think that type of language needs to be
Excuse
stopped.
me.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Don't address me like that.
Ma'am, please. You don't have the floor now. The councilman has the floor.
Well, the clock's ticking.
It's okay, but you don't have the floor right now. The councilman has
Okay.
called for a point of
Just
order.
make the
So
clock stop.
I must deal with the point of order. He just stated his point of order, and his point of order is taken. You need to keep your comments about the actual use permit.
See, this is where I disagree with all of you. When dealing with a use permit, it affects more than just the footprint of the owner of the use permit.
Ma'am?
The permit that you are about to give to this owner will reflect how it expands to the community. In other cities, they actually look at the permits and what they're contingent to and how it will reflect on the nearby citizens regarding their health, safety, and welfare.
Okay, can I add something to that?
Sure.
We're appreciative of your point of view on other cities, but in this particular instance, when you come and speak at a public hearing, council rules state that you speak to the public hearing item. Ma'am,
I'm speaking to the fact that you all removed the setback in
Point of order,
the
Mr.
zoning
Mayor.
Ma'am.
ordinance,
Point of
which
order.
affects this project.
Ma'am, your point of order is taken. You need to speak to the use permit that is before us. If you're not going to do that, then you have to take your seat, okay? That is our rules. So if you want to have a debate, this is not the time to have a debate.
I'm not going to debate you. What I'm
Thank you.
going to recommend is
Yes, ma'am.
that when you further approve any use permits with the word entertainment in them, they should either be in the entertainment district, or you should reinforce and add the setbacks to the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens who are going to be adjacent to these properties that you're giving use permits to.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Moody, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. The safeguard to the community is that council giveth and council can taketh away when it comes to a use permit if it's becoming a nuisance. And we have done that in the past. When an entertainment establishment becomes a nuisance, we can revoke their use permit. So that is a safeguard. I do appreciate her concern.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other speakers that wish to speak to this item? Seeing none, this item is closed.
Motion to approve.
We need a motion and a second.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is there any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, please vote electronically.
This item is adopted 7-0.
Item D, UP-23-18. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the resolution that we are considering for this public hearing item?
Yes, sir. Resolution granting the request of George Williams for a use permit to operate an entertainment establishment on approximately 9.48 acres parcel located at 4010 Victory Boulevard in Suite 4012C of Victory Crosses Shopping Center in the General Mixed Use Zoning District. The future land use map of the Bill 1 Portsmouth Comprehensive Plan designates this property for commercial type land uses. The property is owned by Victory Crossing Marketplace LLC. Planning Commission recommends approval with conditions, and the actual resolution reads, a resolution granting a use permit UP 2318 to George Williams to operate an entertainment establishment in Suite 4012C at 4010 Victory Boulevard.
Thank you, ma'am. And we do, is the applicant available? Is the applicant available for this particular item? This is a public hearing, and we do have a speaker for this item. And the speaker is Ms. Joanne Clark. Ma'am, if you would come forward, state your name and address. You will have 5 minutes.
I'm opposed to all entertainment district requests for use permits until you reinstate the setbacks for zoning to do so. If you want to have harmony with mixed-use development in this city, where you don't have to call 911 when it gets out of hand, then reintroduce the setbacks. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. This is a public hearing. If you wish to come forward and speak on this public hearing item, come forward, state your name and address, and you will have 5 minutes. Seeing none, this public hearing is closed. Councilman Barnes, sir, you have the floor.
Given that the person's not here, I'm assuming we should defer this.
Applicants are given notification, and unless they have an extenuating circumstance that they have informed the council, they're not here, sir, so we move forward with the vote.
Fair.
That is typically what the process has been.
Fair.
Councilman Moody, sir, you have the floor.
I was going to ask if the applicant communicated any reason for not being here to speak on behalf of his request.
No, sir.
Okay. Given that he's not here to share with us anything about his establishment or field any questions, I will be voting no on this one.
Dr. Whitaker, you have the floor, sir.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the request of Councilman Barnes to defer this to another meeting, what is the, and I guess the city attorney, the rule on that? Is there a particular limitation on us doing that? Because the Planning Commission has recommended approval. And so is there any?
There's no issue.
Is there a requirement that the applicant has to be present? Okay.
No, I don't think there is a requirement for the
Okay.
applicant to be present. The consequence of that, though, is up to council.
Sir, did you finish your comments?
I don't see any issue then with deferring it to another meeting. I don't know if an extenuating circumstance has come up, than to just flat out deny it.
Understood. Thank you, sir. Councilman Moody, sir, you have the floor.
I'll support that, given that he's not here. If we move forward with it, I'd vote against it, but if I'll support a deferral.
Vice Mayor, did you want the floor? I saw you.
Yes, Mayor. I was going to say the same thing, and I don't know if it was appropriate for our Planning Commission to present any information and any conditions, but if we're going to defer, we wait and speak to the applicant. I think we've done this for another applicant who didn't show, who had COVID or some other health issue that was on the table, so I think it's only fair that we at least extend this with a deferral to the next meeting.
So we're in need of a motion and a second.
Motion to defer until our next meeting in October.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to defer. I would ask all my colleagues to please vote electronically.
The deferral is adopted 7-0, and that would be deferred until October the 24th.
Now, one question I have for the city attorney, if the individual doesn't show up at the next meeting, I think it would be appropriate for us to take the vote. Is that appropriate or not appropriate, Madam Attorney?
If that's the will of council, then that is appropriate.
Thank you very much. That concludes our public hearings for this evening. We are now moving on to unfinished business, item 23-306. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance we are considering under unfinished business?
Mayor, prior to reading the ordinance, it was the discussion by City Council to defer item 23-306 versus reading that particular ordinance. If we could just get a motion and a second to defer it to your December 12th meeting.
Right.
Move to defer to December 12th.
We have a motion and a second to defer. I would ask my colleagues to please vote electronically.
This item is deferred 7-0 to the December 12th meeting.
Thank you, ma'am. We are now moved to city manager's report. And item 23-319. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance that we are considering pertaining to this item?
Yes, sir. An ordinance accepting aid to localities funding in the amount of $440,858 from the Virginia Department of Fire Programs and appropriating said amount to the FY 2024 Grants Fund for use by the Department of Fire, Rescue, and Emergency Services for training, equipment, community programs, and other eligible uses.
Thank you, ma'am. We're in need of a motion and a second.
Move for adoption. Second.
Is there any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, I would ask my colleagues to please vote electronically.
This item is adopted 7-0.
Thank you, ma'am. Item 23-320. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance we are considering for this item?
An ordinance accepting a digital literacy workshop incentive, AT&T Phase 2 grant in the amount of $6,000 from the Public Library Association and appropriating said amount in the FY 2024 Grants Fund for use by the Department of Libraries.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Council members, we're in need of a motion and a second.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Is there any additional discussion on this item? Hearing none, please vote electronically.
This item is adopted 7-0.
Item 23-321. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance that we are considering pertaining to this item?
An ordinance appropriating public utility fund balance in the amount of $1,370,000 to the FY 2024 Public Utility Fund budget and transferring said amount to the Sheriff's Office section of the FY 2024 General Fund budget for the payment of one-time personnel supplements.
Thank you, ma'am. Council members, we're in need of a motion and a second.
Move to adopt.
Second.
We do have two registered speakers for this item. The first speaker is Mr. Mark Godaldig-Yutrovsky. Sir, if you would come forward, state your name and address. You will have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and other neighbors. I definitely support the appropriating of money for supplements for the Sheriff's Department employees. What I disagree with is drawing that money from the Public Utility Fund. The Sheriff's Department is not a public utility. And I remember standing at this podium during budget season congratulating you for not grabbing money from public utilities to balance the budget. I continue to believe that the proper fiscal discipline is to use public utility money for funding capital improvements and paying the operating expenses of the public utility system, but not for miscellaneous expenditures. So I don't know what the unrestricted fund balance in the general fund looks like at this point. I don't believe the audit results have been reported yet, but that's one possible place to look for it. And there may be other places, not here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Moody, sir, you have the floor.
On the use of public utility funds, I recall some years ago there was a case up in Alexandria, Virginia, about the use of public utility funds when they were used to balance a budget. Now, like the speaker, I support the sheriff's office in taking care of his personnel. My question for the city attorney, does this, how's this washed legally?
Yeah, when we looked at that, because this is essentially general funds, these are extra funds, these are not encumbered funds, then this purpose is appropriate. And so there are no legal issues with respect to this.
Well, you did look at that particular case?
Yes, I did. Yes, I'm very
Okay.
familiar with it, and this passes muster.
Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir. We do have another registered speaker for this item, Ms. Donna Biggs.
Good evening. My name is Donna Biggs, and I live in the Woodbine Farms neighborhood. You have my address. I just want to kind of remind y'all, it says citizens up here. We tell y'all what to do. Is that happening? So let's look at this item 23-321 is to appropriate $1,370,000 to the current budget from the public utility fund balance to the sheriff's office for payment one time for personnel supplements and supplements to make up for lack of deficiencies. That's the definition of supplements. The report for this item was submitted by interim city manager, not the sheriff. The report reads, for the background, is that in 2022-2023, the city provided $6,500 per sheriff's employees, a one-time supplement. So 136 employees received $6,500 to equal $884,000? Or did each employee get $47.79 as a stipend last year? So tell me what that means. See, I need communication. And many people do not know how to communicate information so that we can understand what is being said. The above information is a prime example of lack of communication skills. So ARPA gave $6,500 for the year 2022-2023, and the sheriff has requested the same amount, and so the city manager is transferring $1,370,000 instead of $6,500. And for discussion, it says City Council has designated public safety and public health as priorities. There's approximately 136 sheriff's employees. The cost with taxes and withholding is estimated to cost the public utilities fund balance $1,370,000. This money will go to the general fund budget before going to the sheriff's fund. Currently, the city manager and sheriff are working with the city attorney on a memorandum of understanding. Next step after council's action, the finance department will complete the necessary budget transfers and provide the supplement on or about November the 20th, 2023. Assessment. The memorandum of understanding has not been signed yet. The finance department has not completed the necessary paperwork to authorize the budget transfer. What are the line items that the ARPA funds pay for? What are the line items that the Public Utilities Fund will be paying for? How will the Public Utilities Fund get reimbursed so decrease the burden of taxation on we the people? This is a FOIA request to get the specific details on how the people's money will be spent. The other thing that is in the budget book that I would like to know about the incentive program, the Master's Deputy Program. Will this provide equal and balanced pay among employees, training opportunities, and offering meals for deputies while on duty in jail? So I want to know everything about my money and how it's being spent, and y'all are not doing what it says here. I and we the people are the boss telling you what to do, and y'all don't have any assignments in the district to say who's done what.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Whitaker, you have the floor, sir.
Yes, this message is for the interim city manager. I just want to make sure the amount that's being requested on the 1.37 million, is the sheriff in agreement with this being the amount that will satisfy the supplemental pay request? Does the sheriff agree with the amount that you're asking council to approve?
So I can't speak for the sheriff, but he's been on this the entire time.
No,
So-
I'm not saying that. I mean, but I would assume you all have communicated and there's an agreement between the two of you that this amount will satisfy the supplemental pay request that he made. Because council, we haven't been privy to those conversations. So is this the amount that will satisfy the sheriff?
So you have been privy because those have been on every email.
No, I'm talking about just emailing us is one thing. Communicating with the sheriff to say, here's the amount, is this going to satisfy the request that was made? I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with that.
If I may,
The sheriff
Dr.
is here.
If I may,
Okay.
Dr. Whitaker,
Yeah.
the sheriff is in the room. Sheriff,
Okay.
if you don't mind, sir, if you would please come forward and state your name and address. And you will have 5 minutes, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, staff. Yes, I'm in agreement,
That's fine. That's all I need to know.
and I really appreciate all of you all working hard to look out for the employees of the Sheriff's Office. Thanks again on behalf of the entire staff. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome, Sheriff. We
Move
have
for
a motion
approval.
and a second. It's already been made. Is there any additional discussion? I would please ask my colleagues to vote electronically.
This item is adopted 7-0.
Thank you. Our next item, item 23-322. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance that we are considering pertaining to this item?
An ordinance accepting developmental disability residential support funds in the amount of $871 from the Virginia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services and appropriating said amount in the FY 2024 Behavioral Health Care Service Fund for maintaining support and services for individuals diagnosed with an intellectual and developmental disability.
Thank you, ma'am. And we are in need of a motion and a second.
Move for adoption.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, would you please vote electronically?
This item is adopted 7-0.
The next item, item 23-323. Madam Clerk, could you please read the ordinance that we are considering pertaining to this item?
Yes, sir. An ordinance to reappropriate unexpended funds in the amount of $1,148,518 from the FY 2023 Portsmouth Public Schools Textbook Fund budget to the FY 2024 Portsmouth Public Schools Textbook Fund budget.
Thank you, ma'am. Council members, we are in need of a motion and a second.
Move for approval. Second.
Any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, would you please vote electronically?
This item is adopted 7-0.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next item, item 23-324. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance that we are considering pertaining to this item?
An ordinance to reappropriate unexpended funds in the amount of $1,188,232 from the FY 2023 Portsmouth Public Schools Food Service Fund budget to the FY 2024 Portsmouth Public Schools Food Services Fund budget.
Thank you, ma'am. Council members, we are in need of a motion and a second.
Move for approval.
Second.
Is there any additional discussion on this item? Would you please vote electronically?
This item is adopted 7-0.
Next item, 23-325. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance that we are considering pertaining to this item?
Yes, sir, an ordinance to reappropriate unexpended funds in the amount of $8,658,832 from the FY 2023 Portsmouth Public Schools Grant Fund budget to the FY 2024 Portsmouth Public Schools Grant Fund budget.
Thank you, ma'am. Council members, we are in need of a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is there any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, would you please vote electronically?
This item is adopted 7-0.
Next item is item 23-326. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance that we are considering pertaining to this item?
An ordinance to reappropriate unexpended funds in the amount of $3,267,642 from the FY 2023 Portsmouth Public Schools Risk Management Fund budget to the FY 2024 Portsmouth Public Schools Risk Fund budget.
Council members, do we have a motion and a second?
Second.
Is there additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, would you please vote electronically?
This item is adopted 7-0.
Thank you. Item 23-327. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance that we are considering pertaining to this item?
An ordinance to reappropriate unexpended funds in the amount of $7,875,856 from the FY 2023 Portsmouth Public Schools General Fund budget to the FY 2024 Portsmouth Public Schools General Fund budget.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, would you please vote electronically?
This item is adopted 7-0.
And Madam Clerk, well, we're now at item 23-328. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance that we are considering pertaining to this item?
An ordinance accepting the return of unexpended funding from the FY 2023 PPS General Fund budget in the amount of $9 million, appropriating said amount to the FY 2024 City General Fund budget and transferring said amount to the schools projects category of the FY 2024 City Capital Improvement Fund budget.
Move for approval.
Thank you, ma'am. We have a motion and a second, and we do have one registered speaker for this item. Mr. Mark Godaldig-Yatrovsky, if you will come forward, sir, state your name and address. You will have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, and other neighbors. So there was a very illuminating presentation this afternoon regarding the reappropriation items that you have just approved and this one. The school leadership gave very convincing and clear arguments for moving forward with funding of a CTE building facility for all the students in Portsmouth Public Schools. And I'm very happy that it took place because it gave council and definitely the public an opportunity to walk through the rationale for doing what is contemplated here. When the idea of having a public work session on this particular topic was raised at the last meeting, some council members expressed consternation about the idea. They maintained that this is money that the school system had a right to, and that the school system should make the decision, the school board actually, the governing body of the school system, should make the decision without any further conversation on the part of council. I want to say I strongly disagree with that in the current environment, which is that the General Assembly empowers City Council to appropriate and reappropriate the money for the school system. And so you are doing your job when you are receiving information about the whys and wherefores of that reappropriation. Now, I had no concern at all that these reappropriations would pass through the council, because based on your history of the last 3 years, this council has demonstrated it is strongly in support of our schools and our school children. So I think there was something of a tempest in a teapot here. But I would say that to alleviate future consternation, something concrete that you all could do is add an item to your legislative packet whereby you would ask the General Assembly to change our charter so that the school board has a revenue source for itself and does not need to come to the city council for appropriation or reappropriation. To me, that would have made sense when we went to elected school boards. So I would like you to consider that remedy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Hugo, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So I did ask at the last city council meeting for more detail into the plan, and I appreciate that Chairman Patillo and Dr. Bracy provided that detail during our work session today. My concern last meeting was that it appeared we had a $9 million down payment on an open-ended requirement, $12 million identified for construction, but the end-to-end costs were not spelled out. And so I appreciate that Dr. Bracy, Mr. Falk, took the time this afternoon to walk us through the rest of the detail. And I've been accused of micromanaging, but when we're talking about $9 million or $13 million, I don't think it's micromanaging to ask a few questions, not only on my behalf, but on behalf of the folks that are sitting out in the crowd. So given the presentation that we just saw, the fact that Dr. Bracy and Mr. Falk have shown a path to fully fund the CTE school, and given my support for CTE education, I intend to vote yes. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any additional discussion on this item? Seeing none, I would ask my colleagues to please vote electronically.
This item is adopted 7-0.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is new business. Item 23-329, boards and commissions.
Thank you, Mayor. There are no boards or commissions to discuss tonight.
Thank you, sir. We have now come to item 23-330, items submitted by council. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance we are considering under items submitted by council?
An ordinance to amend and reordain Chapter 2, Administration of the Code of the City of Portsmouth, Virginia by adding a new Article 21, establishing the Crime and Gun Violence Commission.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Tillage, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to move that we amend item 3-330 to reflect the following. Removal of the provisions of city council members and ex officio department heads and other necessary typographical changes. The new version was presented to council earlier today, as well as it is on the dais in front of you.
Okay, also, Councilman Tillage, I know that you had presented in that document that you wanted or you recommended that the language be crime and gun violence prevention.
Yes, sir. So that was just a technical change. So the commission, instead of it being the Crime and Gun Violence Commission, it will be called the Crime and Gun Violence Prevention Commission.
Yes, sir. Do we need a motion and a second to?
We have the motion, we need a second.
Okay, we need a second on that motion?
Second.
Is there we do have a speaker for this particular item, two speakers actually, Mr. Mark Godaldig-Yatrovsky and Ms. Donna Biggs. So Mr. Yatrovsky, sir, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and other neighbors. So I am in favor of having this commission, but what I strongly oppose is the seating of two members of council. I don't know if that was affected by the changes today.
Yes.
It was.
So the two members of council, according to the amendment, have been removed. And it'll just be non-members of the community, no members of council. Council will serve as liaison.
Okay, well, I support that change. Thank you very much.
And Ms. Donna Biggs, ma'am, if you would come forward, state your name and address. You will have 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Donna Biggs, and I live in the Woodbine Farms neighborhood. Agenda item 23-330 is an ordinance to amend Chapter 2 of the Code of the City to add a new Article 11 to establish a Crime and Gun Violence Commission, but y'all made a change to the name. For your knowledge and instruction, there is a Community Criminal Justice Board managed by the Sheriff's Department. Remember the prior agenda item to give the Sheriff's Office $1,370,000? Here is the board that the Sheriff's Office oversees. This board facilitates local involvement and flexibility in responding to the problem of crime in their communities. In the Boards and Commission Manual, the mission statement, the Portsmouth Community Criminal Justice Board brings together community and local agency representatives to establish and implement a comprehensive community correction policy and plan that serves to address local needs and problems. This board has 18 members appointed by City Council, and there's a whole list of members such as judges, chief magistrate, who's also the chair of that commission, member from the City Council, chief of police, attorney for the Commonwealth, public defender, the sheriff's office, probation and parole, superintendent of the Hampton Roads Regional Jail, youth risk prevention, youth risk prevention for the public school, administrative behavioral health, social service, and up to 6 at-large citizens. And the board meets quarterly on the 4th Thursday of the month, and the next meeting is scheduled for October the 26th at 3:30 at 1345 Court Street, first floor. The idea is it facilitates local involvement and flexibility in responding to the problem of crime in their communities. In the Code of Virginia, Article 9 says there's a Comprehensive Community Corrections Act for local responsible offenders. It goes on to say that the article shall be interpreted and construed so as to allow individual cities, counties, or combinations thereof greater flexibility and involvement in responding to the problem of crime in their communities. It provides more effective protection of society and to promote efficiency and economy in the delivery of correctional services. It provides increased opportunities for offenders to make restitution to victims of crime through financial reimbursement or community service. Communication is the key to learning. I met with Mr. Elliott Hill, the coordinator of the Prevention, Reform, and Recidivism Family Unification Program on Saturday, September the 19th, 2021 at High Street, 900 High Street, and gave him the notebook to educate him about restorative practice. I contacted 2 people on his behalf and neither one responded. The second thing I have done is to address the school board regarding implementing the whole school change program to promote, I don't have it, wait a minute. To address the school board regarding implementing the whole school change program to provide information to prevent suspension, and the youth risk prevention coordinator did not respond to this information presented to the school board in September of 2015. The petition I presented to the school board had 100 names of people who wanted to see the whole school change program implemented. There's a summary of the whole school change in your folder as well. Information about restorative practice. Show me the key to unlock the door to communication to gain knowledge in this city. We all have to be ignorant. This is the notebook that I created. Structure and communication is the key.
Thank you, ma'am. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any additional discussion? I'd ask my colleagues to please vote electronically.
This item is adopted 7-0.
Dr. Whitaker, you have the floor.
It's on the next item.
Report on pending items? Okay. Item 23-331, report on pending items. And Dr. Whitaker, you have the floor.
All right, thank you. As my colleagues know, at our last council public work session, we were updated on the Pennis Point situation that occurred. The question that I have is actually to the city attorney. The presentation, no doubt, shows that there were intentional acts by the city based on race, environmental racism issues, the taking of the land, the cooperation of both city, private, industry, banks, and as a result of that historical analysis, we know that persons have been harmed with properties that were lost, as well as some possible environmental issues that may have caused some type of bodily conditions. My question and issue to you is, you mentioned that council needs to come back with some, I guess, remedies and how we want to approach. And I really don't think that council is really equipped with the wherewithal and the skill set to come back with that type of recommendation, because that would require us having some legal knowledge. I would ask that my colleagues that we get a consensus to have our city attorney, given the presentation we have received and the intentional acts by the city that we see over decades, that the city attorney come back with recommendations on possible remedies that could be instituted. And so I think instead of us trying to come to you with it, having no knowledge of what the legal, I would say the legal circumference of how far we can go, I would ask my colleagues to consent to directing the city attorney to come back with recommendations of how we can legally redress that issue.
Councilman Moody, sir, you have the floor.
To follow up on my colleague's request, my question to the city attorney is, in the research that you've done in the past few months, have you identified any legal situations where laws were broken? And the reason why I say usually when a remedy is offered, it's usually because a law was broken. So my question, Madam Attorney, did you identify any laws that have been broken? And I'm talking about the laws of that era, not applying present-day laws to something that occurred 100 years ago or even 70 years ago.
Right. Yes, no, we didn't uncover any illegal acts in that present day. In terms of the transactions and the sale of the properties and that we were asked to look into, no illegal acts.
And you've done pretty thorough research on that in the past 6 months?
My team's worked very hard to get the answers to council, for sure.
Plus, we've had an outside party present to the council on the history of Sugar Hill and some of the things that occurred during that era. So if no laws were broken, under what statute would we be offering a remedy? And usually remedies are either in a monetary remedy or the taking of property to give it back to some lineage of ownership at that time. Would you, Madam Attorney, would you recommend any remedy?
What we've been presented with thus far has not changed the position that I think is available to council, that the legislature has to give us the authority to return any property back or any other means of remedy, but I'd be more than happy to look into see if there's anything else, but I was pretty thorough in terms of the discussion. I do think and stand by the position, and I respect the council members' position that there requires a law degree. I think what we have before us are opportunities for this council to get together to discuss what options are available to them in terms of what priorities they have. And I think once those priorities have been established, they can then direct staff. And that can be the historical divisions of the city, that can be the planning division of the city, can be a number of departments outside of the legal department. We are always willing to participate, but I would ask that the burden not be placed solely on our office to carry this forward.
And to follow up on, I think at the last meeting when this was discussed, I think I requested that your department look into present-day laws to ensure that we have nothing on the books or nothing in our charter, no ordinances that would encourage the taking of property, the illegal tax sales of property, or anything like that that could be construed to be illegal, racist. Is that something that you will be looking into?
I think you both are asking the same question, and we'll report back on. I'll report back on what I find. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Tillage, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to this subject real quick. It was made mention by Dr. Newby Alexander, some possible recommendations for reparative justice. For reparative justice. And so I think that it is, based on those recommendations, I think she gave us the charge to begin looking for those possible solutions and remedies to help mitigate. And it doesn't have to be solely based on giving land back or financial burden, which I think this whole situation has been painted as. But reparative justice comes in other forms. And to the city attorney's point, I don't think this is something that should be based solely in her office. because a lot of this has to do with policy. So what I would ask is that the city council staff, the city attorney and the city manager work together to find policy recommendations, as well as the legal ramifications that council has to implement those policies. Because I think Dr. Newby Alexander explained it very clearly, that just because things were not done things were not done illegally does not mean that it was done ethically. And so I think this is what this entire conversation has been about, is about the ethics of, not the legalities of. And so I would be in support of having the city manager and the city attorney work together to present recommendations to council so that we can begin the conversation of reparative justice for this matter and or any other issue that may be related to.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Whitaker, you have the floor.
Right. The issue of the remedy is I don't know why it keep being limited to land, because that was an initial comment. That's not the only way of remedying it. I think that when we talk about whether it's legal, just because it may not have violated a law, and I'm not talking about something 100 years ago or 70 years ago. Some of those acts were in the 1970s, where they were dumping toxic waste into Penner's Point. There was no doubt from the presentation that Portsmouth acted in a way that was wrong, and it needs to be looked at from the legal department to recommend to council, when wrongs like that occur, what are some possible remedies? And that's not for council to come up with. Just an example of that it may not fit totally into our picture, but an example is what happened at Virginia Tech, okay? Virginia Tech never admitted liability or anything for those killings, but the senator created a commission, and that commission was put together to allow for persons, families that were harmed by that to receive a remedy. So that's something that there was no legal issue there. And so I would suggest that as something to investigate that we could possibly do, because there's no doubt that Portsmouth acted in this and persons were harmed by it. And I don't think we can just ignore that and look to future things, because what Councilman Moody is saying, to look at our laws to see if there's anything in there about race, and that's not in there. Those were not necessarily intentional acts. They had disparate impacts on people. You're not going to find direct language in there, but the way they were applying tax liens in those communities of African descent, it was disparate. And so the idea of looking to see if those things will happen again, that's going to be determined based on the actors, not necessarily the law in that case. So I still would request a consensus to have the city attorney to come back to council with recommendations based on law or other acts that have been put in place to suggest remedy this situation beyond just land.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Moody, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I think before we task the city manager to expend valuable staff time in researching that, I think we need to know that the state would allow such remedy if it indeed is the consensus of council to do that. Is it allowable by the state? I think our last discussion on it, I think State Senator Lucas recommended that she would carry any ordinance to the state to see if it would get approval. But we don't even know if that is something the state of Virginia would allow. And before we charge the city attorney and her staff expending valuable time and researching something, let's find out what the Commonwealth of Virginia allows.
Thank you, sir. Vice Mayor Lucas-Burke.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, colleagues, for the discussion. Of course, Dr. Newby Alexander gave an excellent presentation that gave us a leeway into ways to begin policy studies or information digging deep. Right now, it feels like we are maybe fishing in the dark with trying to find a solution. We do have some ideas on the table. I did recently go by the Sugar Hill, Brenner's Point location just to see what it was, and I saw some of the things that Dr. Newby Alexander presented in her presentation, and I did notice that there was a historical marker. So maybe that's something that we need to consider as well. Anything that's historical that has gone unidentified or unaddressed, maybe those are some of the things that we look at when we're looking at our reparative justices or our policy information. I think we don't need to sweep it under the rug like we didn't see the presentation and that there's something that our hands can do. And Senator Lucas did mention that she would take any piece of legislation that we present to her. So I think we just need to come together as a council to decide which direction we want to move on that. And of course, our policy, I didn't mention it during our meeting under our meetings by liaisons, but our Legislative Policy Committee have met several times, and we have deferred the meeting of our policy packet to present to council to after the November election, so that we do know who our legislators will be identified as. So that meeting that was scheduled for October 24th is now moved to the first meeting in November after the election.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Tillage, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. In regards to the reparative justice conversation, Dr. Newby Alexander presented, and she stated numerous times that there are things that the localities can do right away. And so I think that's what my colleague, Councilman Whitaker, is referring to. State Senator Louise Lucas did make mention that she would carry anything that the council asked her to do. The comments that I think were misconstrued by a council member, by Senator Lucas, was as far as the giving of land, that was something that would have to go before the General Assembly. And so there are things that we can do today. Dr. Newby Alexander made mention to partnering and working with the EPA to clean brownfields. We don't need General Assembly approval to begin those processes. There are ways in which we have grant funding to be able to revitalize that area. There's ways in which we can help to increase the value of our citizens' properties without going through General Assembly. Knowledge is power, and as council, I think we need to better understand what our powers are on the local level. And once again, Dr. Newby Alexander and Senator Lucas made mention, let's start on the local level first, and then if there's anything that needs to be addressed through the General Assembly, they would be more than willing to assist. But in order for us to even get to that point, we have to begin the conversation now. So I think that it sounds like everybody's saying the same thing. We just need to have the conversation, but we need to start it now instead of just sweeping it under the rug and pushing it down the road.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Whitaker, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just want to make clear too that I am talking about harm that has been done because of wrongs. And the issue as far as what the law allows, I would think that in our city attorney's research, she wouldn't be recommending anything to us that the law does not allow. So that would be part of what you would be. So it's not like you have to do that or this, but I would think both of them would be done in making solid recommendations to us.
Can I make a suggestion? You have some directives from Dr. Newby Alexander on some recourse that can be taken. Can we start the discussion with you all deciding which of those priorities are the avenues? I think they encapsulate a number of areas. I know that you're talking, it sounds like there's really two groupings of things that are being talked about. One is what is the reparative justice, but also are there any grounds for the city to bring action or to remedy some wrongfulness that was described in the presentation that would result in something that would be appropriate for the city attorney's office to do, because there could be private class actions that could be taken outside of the city attorney's office that would not be appropriate for us to do. But it sounds like you're asking a couple of things, restorative justice, but also, is there something that this city could do to remedy that would be appropriate for a city attorney's office to bring on behalf of the city? Is that what you're saying?
When you say bring on behalf, are you talking in a legal court sense?
Right.
No, I'm actually saying that there are two avenues. There's the future to prevent these things, but also there was harm that was done to people in the past that needs to be addressed. And so that's where I'm saying your office would be better suited to letting us know, after you've done your research, what is legally allowable to address a past harm such as that. The senator I was referring to was Senator Kane when I spoke about Virginia Tech. And his representative was at our meeting. And so that would be an avenue to pursue to see what were the steps they put in place during that situation that we can incorporate here to address past harm. We can't ignore the past harm. It's both.
Because it sounds like restorative justice. And restorative justice has a very unique set of steps that are taken. And the first of which is that the body that acts gets together to prioritize what's going to be, and if it's going to be the harm, then that's what it is, and we move forward with that. I'm not trying to be difficult. I want to be very clear on the directive that you're giving, because it could go any number of directions. And we heard a lot in that presentation. And then the reporting was several pages. And I mean, I'm not trying to discourage. I just need more direction.
I'm trying to be very clear with the consensus that I'm asking for is that we direct the city attorney to report back to council on remedies that would be available to address past harm. That's what. Now, whether council deals with what we do in the future, that's another step as well. But that's not what I'm addressing.
If I may, one of the things that I've heard, and we were all in the presentation, and I've been looking into and asking some questions nationally of some of my colleagues that are in the mayor's roles that have dealt with similar issues. And I think, to my colleagues' point of view, reparative justice, what that means, I think even the terminology, most of us don't even know what that encapsulates. And as a result of that, I think the prudent thing to do, and I'm just making a statement, is for us to begin to gather information, talk to some of the folks that have actually done these types of things, and then get information and then have a discussion. Because at the end of the day, what we want to create is perhaps a model for going forward for not only our community, but for other communities that might be similarly situated. So, I've listened, and I think that probably a good place to start would to be for us to gather the information on these types of things like reparative justice, which Dr. Newby Alexander recommended. Because at the end of the day, we all, as an elected body, need to be informed in order for us to make the best decisions collectively that will move our community forward in a positive and equitable way. So that's my recommendation. I heard what was called for. I think we need to gain more information and insight based on what we heard from the professor. And she did say restorative justice, reparative justice. Look at those models and then get together and have a conversation. It doesn't hurt us. It doesn't hurt us from having those discussions and really looking at information that will lead us to a better situation. And that's what I support that. I think we haven't even tried it yet. So until we try it, I just think, we owe it to the public. We owe it to those individuals in the past. And that's, I think, a good place to start.
And Ms. Mayor, I would just recommend again that in Dr. Newby Alexander's presentation, I noticed you keep keep mentioning reparative, the first bullet point of her recommendation, I would advise council to make sure you look at that again because it spoke about investment in those who have been impacted. Okay, that's past, but it also talked about future. So my consensus, if council chooses not to address the past harm, then let's move forward. But I would want to at least have that on record through a consensus that we're going to either look to address it or we're not going to address it. And the only way to proceed with that is for our city attorney to come back with recommendations.
Well, I think she has come back with recommendations.
No, I'm talking about based on the question I'm raising. She has not, her recommendations were based on the land issue. I think there are bigger issues than that. So my consensus is there. We can vote it up or vote it down.
Very good, sir. There's a consensus, and state your consensus again, please.
The consensus is to direct the city attorney to report back to council on remedies to address the past harms that were done to the residents of Sugar Hill, and what are those possible remedies that would be available.
Well, before I give the floor to I believe she, in that report, she gave us two options. Let me just finish. You had the floor, so I just need to finish. The two options were the General Assembly has the authority to make those changes, or it's a legal matter, and it's a legal matter that the courts decide on. Those were the two options.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Can you have my consensus voted up or down, please?
Councilman Hugo, you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So my question to the city attorney, based on the consensus that Dr. Whitaker has proposed, I'm concerned that that opens you up to so much that you don't have enough staff to do what he's asking you to do. Is what he's asking for clear enough to you so that your staff's capable of coming back? I mean, because it seems to me that Dr. Newby Alexander did give us some recommendations and suggested to us if we have other recommendations, we ought to put those together and then ask you to evaluate whether those ideas are legal, not legal. We have the authority, we don't have the authority, but at least that provides you kind of a starting place and a limit to what we're asking you and your staff to do.
Anything that could isolate the priorities would be helpful to the staff, but our team will do what is asked by the majority of council.
Councilman Moody, sir, you have the floor.
Well, the broader question too is what, this is limited to Sugar Hill?
Are you asking me a question?
I'm rhetorically, I'm asking that probably to the city attorney.
Right.
How are you going to limit something so broad to one small, in the context of the city of Portsmouth? Sugar Hill is a very small area.
Sure.
So wouldn't that set a precedent?
Sure. It just depends on what's uncovered. It could be applicable to other
Whatever we
neighborhoods.
do sets a precedent throughout the city,
Sure.
not just Sugar Hill. So I think you have to proceed with caution on what you do. I don't think anybody wants anybody to be wrong, but also I like to see, have we actually had complaints or any legal cases from former residents or even current residents of Sugar Hill? I think we would need to know that as well before we fix a problem. It sounds almost like we're trying to fix something that doesn't exist, and doesn't exist from a complaint standpoint.
There have been no legal cases, if that's what you're asking.
Councilman Barnes, you have the floor, sir.
To my council colleagues And, well, first to the city attorney, normally if anything's illegally done or anything wrong, you normally voice that before we even get to that point of proceeding with anything. So I'm not sure why we just don't, one, call the consensus. If people don't feel that they are in support of it, just say you're not in support of it. But carrying this on for an hour and a half just because you don't agree with it is pointless. Let's just move on with the consensus so we can move on in the agenda. God.
Dr. Whitaker, you have the floor.
That's what I was, if you would, call for the consensus.
Okay. State the
I've
consensus.
already stated the consensus, and the council is aware of what the consensus is.
Okay. So I guess the consensus is to ask the city attorney to bring back information regarding what type of legal remedies or remedies that are available.
So
That's my
Okay.
consensus is on record.
Okay, got it, sir. If you could just show of hands, all that are in favor of doing that?
One, two, three, four. See how quick we could have did this?
Come on, now.
Those who are not in favor?
What is the count?
It's 4-3.
All right, thank you. All right. I still have.
You have the floor, sir.
The other issue is in regards to the interim city manager. When will we have the presentation on the disparity study?
I was hopeful that we could have it November 28th, but there's been some, it's still under review by MGT. They've sent some information. We've given them some feedback. We're waiting for them to provide it back. I asked, could I give the draft to council if she thought that would be appropriate. She wanted to go through it one more time just to ensure they captured everything.
Okay.
And so I'm hopeful that it will be before, what is this? Maybe the next council meeting or no later than November, but she is scheduled to come in November.
Okay, all right. And this is back to the city attorney in regards to the update on the issue dealing with the state compliance report regarding Elizabeth Minor Golf Course. When will you give us an update on that?
We're still
You said-
gathering
okay.
information, so I'll update you as we move along.
All right. And then, Ms. Mayor, the other issue involves the sprinkler system for Mount Herman. Where are we, Ms. Interim City Manager Terry? Where are we on that? Because there have been some disparities in the costs that have been presented. I know you were getting some quotes.
We hope to get the final assessment done by next week.
Okay, all right. And then my last, I think it's my last question, but Ms. Jacqueline Williams, that issue, she came before us about her property being inherited, sold, and there are surplus taxes that she has not received.
We are working with her to create what remedies she may have. We're trying to make sure we're not overstepping our bounds in terms of advising her.
Okay.
And then if there is something necessary to present to council, we will present that to you in terms of decision-making, but you will be updated nonetheless
Okay.
on what we decide when we get
So
to
there
that point.
appears that she is due that surplus.
It's not clear.
Oh, okay.
It's not clear, and that's
Okay.
the issue.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Thank you.
Councilman Tillage, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of items. Number one is in regards to the city assessor's office. The city assessor, she presented to a couple of members of, well, quite a few members of council, one-on-one in regards to her budget. I think her budget requests needs are validated, and so I would like to see if we can have at the next council meeting, an item on the agenda to grant Ms. Culpepper her budget request for her to be able to bring in the necessary resources that she needs to provide services for our assessor's office. So if we can get a consensus on council to have that added to the agenda for the next meeting.
Councilman Barnes, you have the floor.
Did we get a consensus?
Yes.
Oh, I wanted to speak. I thought we.
You know, everybody doing this.
I don't see four hands.
He was still speaking on the issue.
Okay, so
I think he was still speaking to the issue.
Well, I still had other issues. Oh, were you speaking on the issue?
Yeah, I wanted
Okay.
to speak on it.
Go ahead.
He was on the board, so I apologize. Councilman Barnes, sir, you have the floor.
And this is just my opinion, I'm not exactly sure that we should move on with that request yet until we actually fulfill that position permanently. Because then what will happen is, once we fulfill that position permanently, then that person is gonna come back with the stuff for their budget that they're gonna need, and then, or they may not need some of this stuff that's being asked for. Now, I haven't been in the presentation, I had to reschedule my presentation, but what I'm saying is that we are actively searching for our permanent city assessor, so I don't think we should move forward with that right now without actually putting that position in permanent, so we can make sure we address all the needs of the person who's there.
We already have a consensus.
Yes, I think we've already indicated a consensus, so we're going to move forward with that matter. Councilman Tillage, you had some other items, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Next, the last couple of days, we've been able to spend time at the Virginia Municipal League in the city of Norfolk. It was hosted there this year. Myself, along with many of my colleagues, we were able to attend to see and to learn about different initiatives that are happening across the Commonwealth that localities are excelling in when it comes to innovation, community development, parks, different capital improvement projects. And so it was really good to be able to be a part of these conversations and to hopefully to bring some of these ideas back to Portsmouth and to build upon them. In addition, this is a request that I've made a couple of times, but I just want to go ahead and make a consensus on it. This afternoon, we had a closed session in regards to some issues surrounding collective bargaining. And so in that meeting, we were able to discuss some things, and some members of council believe, as well as myself, that in order to make an informed decision on anything, we need to have all sides of the argument to be presented. So I would ask for my council I would like to call for another consensus to allow for the National Coordinator for Collective Bargaining and State Initiatives from the AAC, the International Association of Firefighters, to come before City Council at a public work session to present the pros of collective bargaining. I think it's best to have pros, cons, and then, of course, somewhere in the middle lies truth, somewhere in the middle lies neutral understanding for us to make an informed decision. So if it's the will of council, I would like for Mr. Chris Bartley to be able to present at our next public work session surrounding collective bargaining before we make our decision on November the 14th.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Hugo, and then we'll go back to your consensus. Councilman Hugo.
I have a new item, so.
Okay. So there's a consensus from my colleague on council for us, by a show of hands, to have the representative from the International Association of Firefighters to come before us and provide a presentation. So if I could get a show of hands in favor of that.
And that's at a public work session, is that correct?
At a public work session.
Okay, that's all 7.
And see the mayor's hand.
We just did it again.
Okay.
I
Y'all
can't
gotta
do
raise
two
your
things
hand.
at once sometimes. Councilman Hugo, sir, you have the floor.
You all done there? Okay, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just one item. Today is World Mental Health Day, as proclaimed by the World Health Organization. Some WHO statistics across the world, about 1 billion people are living with mental health issues. 3 million die every day from the harmful use of alcohol, and across the world, 1 person dies every 40 seconds by suicide. The folks from Virginia Organizing sponsored a walk this morning from the High Street Coffee Shop here to City Hall in commemoration of today being World Health Day, and they shared that we should be reminded that there's a new 988 call number for folks who are suffering mental health issues. So 911 for an emergency, but 988 is the number for those who might be contemplating suicide or having other mental health crises. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir. Vice Mayor Lucas Burke, ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just would like to get, well, I was asking about one specific item, and I know that there was was going to be an auction behind our entertainment district, and I don't know, I know that might be a legal matter, so what I was asking is could we get an update, maybe it has to be a closed session on pending legal matters that are facing us in the city. Okay. And I guess a question, I guess, to our city manager, in attendance at our VML conference today, and I attended the broadband authority, broadband presentation, and there was a group with Loomis that is, I guess, trying to come before us. They mentioned that they're doing business in Virginia Beach and Chesapeake and a whole other plethora of localities across Virginia, but they're hitting some roadblocks with Portsmouth. So asking if that might be a closed session that council could have to see why we're at a standstill, because I think they presented to us sometime earlier in the year and council was in favor of this group Loomis moving forward with coming into our area and taking up some of that slack space where we are lacking in our ability to provide fiber optics, broadband, and internet services.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Barnes, sir, you have the floor.
As it pertains to the crime in the city, and I think we took a step today earlier with assigning a board. Having said that, that can't be the only step. One of the things I mentioned when we had our crime meeting a few weeks ago is that we have to make sure that we get all departments, a plan from all departments involved, including city council, to really address this crime issue. And as we see on this list, is going to be people who come up and talk about the crime issue. And it's not just a police thing. It's not just a city manager thing. It's not just a city council thing. It involves all departments. So with that being said, I'm not sure how council feels about it, but since everybody's throwing consensus out, I'm going to throw my consensus out as well. I want a consensus asking that we ask the city manager to talk with her staff and her department heads to all come up with a crime plan from their standpoint of how we can address this issue so that we can move forward and stop what's going on in our city.
You heard the consensus. If you could give a vote by show of hands.
So 5-2. You put in raise his hand. So what is
A consensus to get your staff, which is your department heads, to come up with a crime plan from as it pertains to what their department can do to address the crime issue in this city.
For their specific area.
Yes.
Councilman Hugel, sir, you have the floor.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. So I didn't agree with the consensus, and I'll tell you why. We just now stood up a commission, and one of the taskings that I think we discussed giving to this commission was to assemble an integrated crime plan on behalf of the city. So I'm not sure why we would jump the gun. I mean, the city manager already has a bunch of crime plan stuff. We need to feed that into the bigger effort, which is the effort that I think we just set in motion with the vote that we took earlier tonight. I haven't said that, been thinking about this, and I'm not sure that I know how that group is going to step out and build a crime plan, except maybe if we give them some help. And there are some groups out there that provide consultation services, and I think we ought to investigate looking for an outside group that is already engaged with other cities who are frankly struggling with the same issue that we're struggling with. Lots of things happening, but they're not happening in an integrated way and in an integrated plan. And so rather than just dumping this back on the city manager and the city staff, I think we ought to preserve the commission that we just stood up and provide them some resources and consider looking into consultation help to give them the benefit of other folks who have already been down this path to put together an integrated crime plan.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Barnes, sir, you have the floor.
The consensus passed already, correct? That's what I'm talking about, just prolonging stuff for no reason. As far as, I had two more comments to go with mine.
You have the floor, sir.
Well, one was, I remember meeting with the city manager and the police chief a few weeks ago, and it was something that disturbed me as it pertains to our policy, or whose policy, I'm not as sure, about the fire department. As when a crime happens, somebody gets shot or something, that for that matter. Right now, the fire department and the paramedics, am I correct, they can't assess the scene, or they can't basically rescue a person without the police coming to secure the scene first. Is that correct? Just want to make sure.
I would rather wait until the chief, he's not here.
Okay.
Okay.
I can respect it. And my last one is as it pertains to EDA. I think Councilman Tillage mentioned probably months ago that we really need to get with the EDA and talk about our vision for the future of Portsmouth. And I say that's important because right now, especially for our downtown area is very important, and we can't just put any types of business down there. It needs to complement our waterfront. And I'm afraid that if we don't get a plan together, we don't meet with EDA, that we're going to put so much downtown before we actually develop the waterfront, that we're not going to have any space to complement our downtown area. So I think that is important that we meet with EDA and have that joint meeting, and probably include Portsmouth Redevelopment and Housing, since they have some properties as well, and discuss what our vision as a council is for the city, so that we can put something in place that complements the waterfront and complements what the other cities are doing as well, as far as bringing people to the city. As I said before, I know we have a focus on small business, and we should, but we also need big businesses here because they complement those small businesses. And what I mean by that is that when you go to another city let's say you go to another city to go to the Cheesecake Factory, well, the Cheesecake Factory itself may be packed. And because of that, you will look into the local restaurants around, the small local restaurants around. But that brought you to the city to go to that Cheesecake Factory. In Portsmouth, we don't have that attraction right now. We don't have those big businesses that's going to bring people from Virginia Beach, people from Norfolk, people from Chesapeake to the city, which in return is not helping our small business, because the only people who go to those smaller restaurants and those small businesses in Portsmouth is Portsmouth citizens. And we need other citizens for other cities to actually come here and spend into our economy, so that we can really have money for services and things of that nature. So I think it's very important that we get this meeting so we can talk about our vision, because I'm really afraid that we're going to continue to approve so many business based off the Bill 1 that we're not going to have any property left to bring in some business that could really help our small business and help our city bring in tax dollars.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other items? Dr. Whitaker, sir, you have
Just
the floor.
one more quick. For the interim city manager, the ARPA gift card Alice distribution, did we get an update on that?
I think the previous update I provided were the numbers, but I have to go back and I just don't remember. I need to go back.
I think the request was to show us how those teachers qualified under Alice and how that was determined.
Under Alice or through the ARPA program?
Well, I thought
You want qualifications.
I thought you mentioned that those gift cards were justified by them qualifying under Alice.
The gift cards were, I will provide you the information. I
Okay.
don't.
And so I was just, because I've been getting some inquiries on that as
Okay.
far as some didn't get them, some did get them, and exactly how that was done.
No problem.
Yeah.
Thank you. Two things. Okay, go ahead, Vice Mayor.
I'm sorry, next week we'll be meeting with the Hampton Roads Regional Jail, and not sure when information will be relayed to the public, but I guess after next week's meeting, if we can get city manager to provide an update on where we are with that.
Thank you, ma'am. A couple of other items I'd like to mention under items submitted by council is that the month of October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So it's important that we remember those individuals who are victims of domestic violence and that we support them in their healing efforts. The other thing is, of course, this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And so you'll see us participating at some level here on council at our next council meeting. But we want to recognize the importance of breast cancer awareness. We want to encourage our ladies and our men to get tested, right? Men get breast cancer too, guys, believe it or not. So we want to encourage everybody to get those mammograms and get tested, because the life you may save could be your own. Thank you. We're now moving to report on pending items. Ma'am, did you have any reports on pending items?
No, sir.
Thank you very much. Now we have come to our item 23-332, non-agenda speakers. And Madam Clerk, would you please read the speaker statement?
City Council rules require a limit of up to 5 minutes to speak. As you approach the speaker's podium, you will notice a timer. At the beginning of your 5 minutes, you will see a green light. 4 minutes into your remarks, you will notice a yellow light. At the end of 5 minutes, you will see a red light, hear a beep, and we ask that you conclude your comments at that time. While speakers have an opportunity to address council on matters of public concern, all comments should be made in a manner that respects the seriousness of the forum and should not be made in a belligerent, sarcastic, or demeaning fashion. All remarks shall be directed to the City Council as a body rather than any particular member of City Council, staff, or the audience, and should be limited to matters that only the Portsmouth City Council can influence. A speaker who fails to observe this basic rule of decorum will be deemed out of order and not allowed to conclude his or her comments.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Our first speaker this evening is Ms. Miranda Hancock. Ms. Hancock, if you are here, if you would please come forward, state your name and address. You will have 5 minutes. Our next speaker is Mr. Charlie Jones. Our next speaker is Mr. Mark Godaldig-Yatrovsky.
Mayor, council, and other neighbors, So a couple of weeks ago, I was approaching the Churchland Bridge and saw one of the mobile signs flashing. I said, uh-oh, another bridge closure. But as I was driving past, something didn't quite click with that. And on a subsequent pass, I saw it was referencing changes to waste management. And I'm going, what? And it took me another pass before I got the full message. So on November 13th, we're going to have some alterations to the waste management collection regime. And this was surprising to me because I knew the council had had a session on challenges with bulk collection, dumping, and particularly alleyway issues. But as far as I could tell, and I went back through council minutes and through my messages from public affairs in the city, I didn't see any public input sessions on waste management. No town hall meetings, nothing. So what I found on the webpage within the last week and a half, I think, were some outlines of changes that are coming. One of them, in Churchland, our collection day is changing from Monday to Wednesday. That's not really a big deal. We have a number of Monday holidays when it de facto becomes Wednesday. So nobody has any heartburn over that. But a number of folks, myself included, in my neighborhood have posted on our neighborhood conversation pages about what's happening with bulk pickup in this regard. We are going from the opportunity to have bulk waste, things like tree limbs, furniture, appliances, the stuff that you can't put in clear plastic bags and that aren't appropriate for your waste collection bins. Those are the things we set out on the curb, and a big truck comes along and the claw reaches down, picks them up, and drops them in. So instead of the possibility of being collected on our normal trash day or substitute trash day, under the new regime, it's going to 12 times a year. That's problematic, especially for those of us who live in the urban forest or on the edge of it, because Mother Nature deposits a lot of stuff in our yards that won't fit into clear plastic bags, tree limbs, branches, and it's quite possible that the average do-it-yourself homeowner is going to exceed those 12 collection times. The idea of collecting these sorts of things in our yards and taking them out once a month is not particularly appealing, because we thereby would be creating habitat for rodents and other critters running around in our portions of the urban forest. So I would like to ask that you defer that portion of the changes and schedule some public input sessions so we can talk about what our needs are. This is a problem for a lot of people in the city. Waste management affects almost every household. That's my request. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Moody, you have the floor.
To the gentleman's point, I don't recall, and maybe I have forgotten it, I don't recall a lot of discussion on that change. Am I wrong, colleagues? And I don't know what's driving the change, whether it's labor situation, economics, but I would like to have a consensus on deferring it until we're briefed and we do hear public comment on that portion of the change. I agree, going from Monday to a Wednesday that's no big deal, but changing the bulk pickup, I can see where that's going to present some problems. So I would like to know what's driving that, and also I think the public needs to weigh in on it as well. Mayor, could we have a consensus on deferring that until we were briefed?
Well, I think what you first asked for, you asked for some information. And I think we can allow the interim city manager to explain some things, then we can ask for the deferral.
Well, she can explain it to us, but the public out here, I think we'd be wise to get some public input. Because whenever you change something like that does affect people. People that live on the waterfront have debris that's not theirs, wash up in their backyards, and they can't fit everything in a plastic bag. So
I'm not disagreeing with you, sir.
Always willing to hear from the interim city manager on it, but there again, I think we need to have public input.
I'm not disagreeing. Ma'am, if you would present, and then we will deal with the question from the councilman.
Right, so we had a few things that pushed us to consider moving with bulk, several things, and we had a whole work session dedicated to it before we made the determination of that would be a good adjustment for city business, because that was the same work session for talking trash. Several of the reasons we're doing it is because we are losing money. It's becoming a waste for the city to continue having bulk trash where our trash drivers, they drive around looking for items for pickup instead of having a mainstream way of identifying those items through a process. So now they can go online and request those bulk pickups, where before we were actually running around the city looking for who might need something. And what was happening is it would still get undone. You've been able to send me information and say, hey, this isn't picked up or that's not picked up. I get it from several council members. This way it can be identified and addressed, and the violators that dump in our city and are put out can be identified because we know the area. If it's not scheduled, then we know who's doing it by going and having our inspectors address it. The other part of it is the wear and tear on our vehicles. So there's so many things that push this. And then another thing we have is the bulk station. So for those, even though we have 12 pickups within the year for our residents, they have stations that they could go drop off. Say if they clean out the closet and they want to throw a lot of stuff away. They have stations dedicated to citizens at all times. So we're not taking those away. Those will still be available. But we did a whole public work session, and then during budget, we spoke to it. And so this wasn't just an arbitrary change. This was how it was going to impact the citizens. We are now going to a structure of being able to pick up bulk. We're probably the only city in Hampton Roads that doesn't have a structured process in place now. So it would be a benefit. Change is hard, but it's necessary. And that's just my part. But whatever you have to do.
What are the bulk stations? Where are these?
From our talking trash presentation, one is in Portsmouth, off of behind the casino. That's Cavalier Boulevard, I believe, and the other one is in Churchland. I forget the actual street.
Brandon Lane?
Brandon Lane.
Let me tell you about Brandon Lane. The bulk station is a 30-yard roll-off container. Mm-hmm. And what's happening, commercial people are depositing their waste there, mm-hmm. and leaving very little room for the residents on Brandon Lane. So.
Right. So one of the things, even in the last meeting, not this last one because I wasn't here, we talked about the not the last one, but we talked about contractors violating by coming over. So one of the issues were if we didn't have somewhere for people to dump, they were dumping all around the neighborhoods. So again, that was another issue for our citizens because again, contractors will be fined. It's a process. So we have our signs up now, we have cameras up now, and they will begin to be ticketed for dumping illegally in our residential sites. And again, it helps us. I mean, it may be an eyesore to some, but we try to clean it at least twice a week, 3 times a week, sometimes twice a day. But if they don't dump somewhere, they're going to dump in our neighborhoods. So we're just trying to isolate where all this illegal dumping is going and prevent us to keep us from riding around and having to do those additional pickups in the neighborhoods where they're just dumping. It's a problem. It's a bigger problem. But at least we have started a process to try to identify what a corrective action. But I'll do whatever you ask.
Councilman Tillage, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. In regards to the bulk stations, the idea behind the bulk stations are great. However, as we learn in our sociology classes, we cannot predict the behaviors of humans. And so the site on Cavalier Boulevard, I have received numerous phone calls about the appearance of it. I drove out there, I have some pictures on my phone, and I understand that city staff dumps it on a normal basis, which I applaud them. However, it looks completely like a junkyard. And one of my biggest concerns is that the land is not protected. And so we cannot control what is being dumped in that area. And a lot of the trash is not in the dumpsters, it's on the land itself, which could lead to possible contamination of land. If we're gonna focus on bulk sites, I think that those trash sites need to be properly established, that we meet the guidelines that a dump would have. Because when I went out there yesterday was it the day before yesterday, I parked on the side of the street, and as I was walking through the mounds of trash, there was liquid that was poured across the area, and that's concerning to me because now that land could possibly have possible contaminations, and we cannot control that. We cannot control that without having the proper procedures in place to mitigate. Also, I saw the cameras. I did not see the cameras. I saw the signs that made mention to the cameras, and I understand, of course, cameras are positioned for certain reasons. But I would like to go out there, I think as a councilman, I think to have the understanding and the contentment of knowing that they're there and to see them for myself. Because what's being done out there, if it's being recorded, then people should have already been violated because it looks absolutely terrible. And also to my other point I just mentioned, the possibility of contamination should be a huge concern of all members of council. So I think we do need to address those issues. And I know that's in response to trying to take bulk trash out of neighborhoods, but at least in that fashion, we were able to keep better control, in my opinion, than just having a big dump site that anybody's going to dump at and have possible contamination.
I just want to speak to that because I hold this near and dear. So what you actually see in those dumpsters and how aggressive that is, even for contamination purposes, I'll use that. That is what we were picking up around the city all day long. So right now, at least it's confined. These are placed, everything you see is what was being still dumped around our city. And so people are just, they should be ashamed of themselves. But again, we have to do something because right now we were doing this all day long. Wear and tear, extra stuff for our drive. And, it's just it's so sad that people feel like they can come to our city and do that. People are just nasty. And it's unfortunate, but we have to find some remedy, because it was that in aisles near churches, in parking lots, you name it. Charles Pete, you know, we had that conversation. They don't care. So at least if I can contain it until we find additional methods to address some of this, at least that's not them running around putting it all in different places. So again, it's a process, it's a beginning. I think it's a fresh start to do something. It's a way for you to actually see what, just a sneak peek in what we were dealing with every day. So we have we'll continue to do our part to get this right, but we were just trying to find a way to get it contained so that it wouldn't be such a burden on our residents in the day-to-day.
How many do we have around the city?
So we have 2 sites, but we've had several. We have 3 or 4 dumpsters, but they get filled up faster than you can say, Councilman Moody. So with the process of adding the signs and the fines and informing people and ticketing them, that should slow up. My biggest concern is now I'm gonna see it dump back in the neighborhoods. So we'll work through to get this under control, but we just made a determination that something had to be done. And we'll hit them in the pockets. But I get a lot of comments from residents thinking that at least they have somewhere to place their stuff, for the residents anyway.
Councilman Barnes, sir, you have the floor.
I hear both of you guys, Councilman Tillage and the city manager. I guess the only resolution is, can we just make sure that we're aggressive with catching those people? Because I've been receiving calls about the Capitol Boulevard site. And it's funny because I forgot to bring it up, but just in the last week, I received a lot of calls about how bad it looks, especially close to the casino. So I'm just hoping that, and like I said, I hear what you're saying, and the best resolution is just to be aggressive with the violators, because it does look bad across the city, but it does look bad there too. So I'm just hoping we can be aggressive with that. Just for clarification purposes, as far as the boat pickup, we're doing the 12 times pickup, but they can also request to do that anytime. So if I have something Monday, but my regular trash, well, we're not doing Monday. If I have something Tuesday, my regular trash day Thursday, I can schedule one on Tuesday, or it will come on my regular day.
Your regular day.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Hugo, sir, you have the floor.
Okay, this horse is almost dead. I got one more comment on bulk pickup. So the comment I heard repeatedly has been, why are we only doing 12? So I support that you're trying to bring discipline. So we're going to request a pickup. So we're not doing an Easter egg hunt looking for trash. That's great. Question I get is, why only 12? Because today you'd come by 52 times a year, once every week, and pick up my limbs, pick up my sofa, pick up my tires, my TV, or whatever. And now all of a sudden we're getting ready to implement, we're not doing 52 times a year anymore, we're going to do 12, and then you're going to start paying. So it seems to me maybe we ought to go back and take a look at, we want them to ask, so we stop the Easter egg hunt, but let's not start billing unless it's clear case of contractor dumping, as opposed to our neighbors putting out their limbs and their stuff.
Yeah, that's just been based on the average of what people actually put out. You know, unless you're just you're cleaning out and throwing away the house, that's just been the average. So if that's not a problem to consider adding additional, but that was just the average of what we saw when we did our research for the regular use of a resident. That's all. But it can be changed. It's just something we're identified.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll take the fee off. I mean, those are things we can look into to make a determination of how did it work and what is going to be the best result for our citizens. But
That would be good.
Yeah.
The other thing,
Mr. Moody, you have the floor.
thank you.
Yeah, that's your second time.
The other thing, and I'm not going to say anything more about it, I appreciate you trying to save the city money, but if I get 12, he gets 12, Councilwoman Lucasberg gets 12, and we live next door to each other, her 12 is not going to coincide with mine and the neighbor down the street. So you could be sending the truck to the same street numerous times a week, a month, versus doing it on the regular pickup day. So
We do it on your pickup days.
yeah.
we do it, yeah. So what it sounds like it's just just confusing. So I can bring that back because I think
Yeah,
it just sounds,
let's bring it
I
back.
think the conversations that people are having with you all are misinformation and the information is out there. So let me just say, this is what it is and this is when we started, because we were going to do this back in August. We've kicked that can down, so now we're in November now. Because we wanted to give them enough time, and we just kept pushing it around May for budget. So I can bring that back. That's not an
Yeah,
issue.
let's revisit that.
Councilman Barnes, you have the floor, sir. Your name is up there. See, okay, yes, sir.
We ready for the next one? I just wanted to say that.
The horse is dead.
Yeah, the horse is dead.
Killed the horse.
Our next speaker is Miss Joanne Clark. Ma'am, come forward, state your name and address. You will have 5 minutes.
Joanne Clark, Churchland. Well, it's time. It's time to redo the comprehensive plan, which is why I've been talking about all the zoning. And you all brought it up tonight. We need to talk about as a community what we have for our vision of our city and how we can address crime. We know that we can't bring a cheesecake factory here if we don't have skilled labor who wants to work in a retail environment. We know that we can't bring Cheesecake Factory here if they're concerned for their employees, if it's safe for them to be here and park in front of the facility. We know we cannot have Cheesecake Factory here if the employees have no place to live. So we need affordable housing. We need to redo our comprehensive plan so that our zoning environment works with our vision so that we can protect the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens. Now, the city of Norfolk has been talking about redevelopment since Mayor Alexander got elected, who used to be a state senator. In 2016, he was elected. In 2017, he implemented a plan to reduce or eliminate public housing. We have had some issues with public housing for quite some time. Whenever we get Matthew, that storm destroyed Swanson homes. Unfortunately, we couldn't displace those people, but for so long, we had to rehab the buildings, but the issue of flooding is not going to go away. So we have public housing in areas that will flood. We have housing that has mold that affects small children. It creates asthma and other upper respiratory diseases. If you want to have a parity on keeping people in poverty in safe environments and to ensure that they're not taken abuse of or they live in conditions that they shouldn't have to be involved with because they're poor, this is how you deal with that situation in Sugar Hill. We make sure that you have affordable housing. The Board of Zoning Appeals came before you all about dealing with non-conforming lots. That issue was a problem because developers wanted to come in and put 2- and 3-story houses on teeny tiny lots. It wouldn't have been a problem if they weren't greedy and just wanted to do a one-story. A one-story, somebody who works at the Cheesecake Factory can actually afford. I hope and recommend that you all start community meetings again, so you can hear from the citizens what they're concerned about and how it all interfaces with crime, safety, redevelopment, and affordable housing. It seems like every time you meet, you talk about it, you draw consensus, but that old can just keeps getting kicked down the road. The waterfront is a $10 million discussion. It's been talked about and studied for almost over $10 million now. It's time to make a plan. Put it in the comprehensive plan. It's time to get the comprehensive plan again and incorporate all these things together. Let the citizens help you. Have one of those meetings in an area or have them at different high schools where we can interface together and get this comprehensive plan by each neck of the city, and then we work together. And we can support the chief of police. We can support the fire department, the EMTs. We can support the teachers. This is not a simple task, but it can be done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next speaker is Miss Angela Britt. Excuse me? Okay. Our next speaker is Sherman Tyler. Mr. Tyler, if you would come forward, state your name and address, sir. You will have 5 minutes.
Yes, my name is Sherman Tyler. I live at 1812 Parker Avenue, Portsmouth, Virginia. Hello, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council. I had to first start off by, I'd like to tell Mr. Bonds, I really thank you. How last week I was trying to get some headstones off of my mother and my brother. They're buried over at Lincoln Memorial Cemetery. And it took me 6 hours to find out that who actually owned the cemetery. I called the person that owned it first. He basically chewed me up, and I called every agency in the city of Portsmouth, and I couldn't find out. I said, who can I call? So I said, let me call Bonds. And I called him. He reassured me that the city did own it, and I appreciate how y'all keep that grass cut, man. And I appreciate the upkeep since the city actually took control over the cemetery. It's real nice, and I thank you for the help. I would like to just say I really think it's a big deal. When people have experienced have experienced unjust, 60s and the 70s, stuff like that. I really commend Dr. Whitaker for your inquiry for justice. I know it don't seem like nothing to some of y'all, but I guarantee you, if that was your grandmother's land or your father's land, I bet you it would mean something to you then. So I thank God for having somebody like yourself on council that's endeavored to stand for what's right, no matter what. And I thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker, Dr. William Dotson.
Bill Dotson, 801 Mimosa. I apologize for not being here to harass you guys. I know you've missed me. I'm still seeing a lack of vision by this board, a lack of goals, a lack of control of the city, and it's still very disappointing not to see y'all have a vision for the city. I heard what Mr. Tillage remarked today on we need a vision. The vision that was talked about was very small, but there's no overall goal with you guys to say where are we going, what are we doing, why are we doing it. In there, without goals, we can't measure anything to see if we're progressing for it. On crime, you can't fix crime unless you have some measurement of it. You're getting some reports here from the police department, but you're not using them. You just ordered a study on crime, I believe, when a couple of you were on the previous board, on youth crime. You didn't use it. We have a budget that I had a friend who did an informal survey of many of you guys, and I'm sad to say that I don't think that there's two of you that have fully read the whole budget. It's really sad to see how we don't have control of this city. We don't know what's going on. What was even sadder today was to see that $30 million of the school budget was reappropriated. I think the school board pulled the wool over your guys' eyes, and a couple of you were on that school board and approved that budget. How did $30 million get by you guys? How badly was that budget appropriated? That's pretty bad if you guys had to reallocate $30 million from that budget. It looks to us as the public as though you don't know what you're doing, that you need to grab control of this city. Here. Now, I don't know that those are all the facts that go with it, but I'm telling you what it appears to us as the public out there. It's hard to come in here to speak to you guys quietly, complacently, and with an educational tone of voice when things are in such poor condition that you're chasing these little lights. How does the phrase go? Oh, pretty lights. Oh, pretty lights, let me go over here. There's so many little things that you guys are attacking that it's busy and not productive. Please, 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 can we set some goals for the city? Can we have a vision for where we want to go? Crime is a great one, and you've got a task force. But given the history of this council, I doubt that we're going to use the information unless somebody takes some leadership and says, let's use this data. I just got back from a 6-week tour of Europe, and I found out that there's a little coin that kind of represents what I want to present regularly to you guys. And so I want to, where do I deliver this to? Over here? Right here. It's a euro, and it's my 2 cents worth tonight. So thank you for listening. Please, let's set some goals.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Ms. Sheila Joseph.
I would like to say thank you all for everything you're doing in the city. And I was intending to speak about something that is going on, and I was trying to address the sewage. And doing the testing, I've been monitoring everything that's going on every day from 7 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And I'm going to continue as long as my legs let me do it. But I wanted to say that a lot of people got these hangers, and some of them blew away because I found some on the ground. And some of them got them, and the last 2 people that they served today was running out of the house talking about, why is all this smoke is in the house? And I told them, I said, you read this? And they said, yes. I said, well, then you should have been calling the people before they start doing it. They gave the date. I wanted to address that. Is it another way that someone, I did make a phone call, and I told them to educate the seniors or whoever that would call them or what to do. So they left a message. So I will call them tomorrow. But like I said, I was out in the street when they called me. That's a good thing, because I'm learning that any issues in the city with the sewage is addressing to point it out. I won't plan on speaking, but when them 2 houses flew outside, I said I need to mention that. Also, I wanted to ask the question, could someone for the Information Act come up with talking to me about how much funds that will be available the way I dressed it, not for to clean or whatever, but to restore by updating the sewage. And some of them I seen at some places, it has about 100 years old pipes. And I can say some areas, they got cast iron pipes as of today was issued, and they brought sewage to the homeowner. So I videoed that also. some places that's happening, and the homeowner bringing companies to repair from the city part to their home. So we want to find out how we can address that. I already know how to address it, but I need someone to sit down on this seat here to talk to me about it. I gave the chief some ideas about crime prevention, and I had addressed it in the past when my children were children. So I'm coming back to reissue that. I gave them like 12 plans, and that was last week, and he loved the plans. Now, the other part I wanted to talk about is the dumping over to Cavalier. At first, I made a comment about it, and then after I made the comment of how it was worse, then one time I went out, it was, like I said, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was taking a picture. Someone drove up beside me, and I guess they wanted to know what I was doing. And I noticed the other one with a gun in his hand. And I don't walk in fear. It was an automatic. But anyway, that's how I be able to open up to people, and I let them know. Anywhere I go, I introduce myself, and they don't have a problem with me. I want to see more people get involved, like the chief was saying. And I told him that night he was speaking, it seems like he was just rolling out the stuff that I already wrote everybody up here about. And we on one accord, but we need more community involvement with everything. And with the trash dumping, I used to talk about maybe that area need to be blocked off to fence and cameras. I'm glad to know it's cameras, because I see that, I don't know for sure. Can I finish that?
Ma'am, your time is up.
Okay then.
Your time is up, ma'am.
All right. Thank you anyway.
Thank you. Mr. Moody, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Joseph has been here a few times in the past year complaining about sewage issues in her community. I'd like for a member of staff to brief her and maybe even do a site visit in that community and see what the problem is.
Our next speaker, Elliot Cohen. Good evening, Mr. Cohen.
Yes.
If you state your name and address, you will have 5 minutes, sir.
Yes, Elliot Cohen. I live at 3613 Point Elizabeth Drive in Chesapeake, but I own a shopping center in Churchland and Portsmouth called City Line Plaza. I was here probably 3 years ago when they were discussing a bike path. Well, the bike path is now being put in, and I'm here hopefully to save somebody's life, because if you look at the pictures that I'm passing by, if you're not familiar with the area, it's the High Street coming in from Chesapeake into Portsmouth, where my shopping center is located, and they are building the bike path. Number one, the bike path is not completed, but people are using it. Yesterday, I saw somebody trip on the stone, and they were wearing like flip-flops or something. There's bicycles riding on the stone. Right next to my property, it's city property. I think the city bought it from the railroad track, and they decided to put the bike path in. If you look at the second page, I believe it is, the one with the ladder in the hole next to the bike path, that ladder is 12 feet tall. If somebody falls in that hole, they're not getting out. Plus, the city has not cut the grass. When you walk up to High Street just like high hedges, you can't see around them. The city, and I've asked the city several times over the years, I've owned the property for 40 years, and I've yet to be able to get them to cut the grass on just off the side of the road. So I'm here tonight asking for your help to get the city to cut the grass, fill that hole. The hole is a storm drain, which will probably need piping put in. I had put piping in, the city made me take it out. So I'm here hopefully to keep somebody from falling into the hole and not being able to get out. It could be a kid, it could be somebody on a bicycle, it could be somebody walking. While it's under construction, put up some barriers to keep people from using it. Somebody's going to get hurt. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Moody, sir, you have the floor. Well, that concludes our speakers for the evening, and if there's no other business to bring before council, that concludes our council meeting. Thank you all. Stay safe and healthy. This meeting is adjourned.